Martin Celebrity Roast, coming to you from the MGM Grand Hotel in the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Ladies and gentlemen, from the beautiful Ziegfeld Room, tonight's star-studded roast has brought together some of the world's greatest entertainers. They've come from all over the world to be here tonight, here in Las Vegas in person, joining Dean Martin as he honors tonight's very special man of the hour, Joe Namath. With tonight's guests, Lee Meriwether, Angie Dickinson, Milton Berle, Red Buttons, David Doyle, Tom Bosley, Bernie Capel, Rich Little, George Blanda, Dick Butkus, Mel Tillis, Norm Crosby, Jackie Gale, Bruce Jenner, Jimmy Walker, Orson Welles, Joey Bishop, and your roastmaster, Dean Martin, with tonight's man of the hour, Joe Namath.
Some of Joe's friends couldn't be here. Dolly Parton was invited, but at the last minute she fell out. Joe, I think we had a little too much to drink last night. At 3 in the morning, he was out in the casino dancing with a slot machine, and I was trying to cut in. Besides being a great quarterback, Joe was also a great swinger. He's the only guy I know who had an electric scoreboard over his bed. 1 week, 30 different girls penalized him for piling on. And he was so ashamed of his passes, he used to call timeout to wipe his fingerprints off the football. Now that Joe's out of football, he's making a career out of show business, but don't let nothing worry you. Remember the famous words of Toulouse-Lautrec, who once said, "Down in front." When it comes to popular country singers, Mel Tillis is always on top of the charts. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet a good old boy and one of my best friends, Mr. Mel Tillis. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dean. You know, I was a little bit nervous about doing too much talking. And you are a really good friend for not giving away my secret. You see, I stutter. And stuttering ain't no problem unless you're messes up my fun. For instance, tonight, the bartender here at the hotel asked me if he could buy me a drink. And by the time I could say okay, the bar was closed. Anyway, I'm happy to be here tonight honoring Joe Namath tonight. Because we both have something in common. I stumble over my words, and Joe stumbles over his feet. Well, Joe, before I go any further, I'd like to say that down in my neck of the woods, I used to watch you play football on TV, but I couldn't see you too well because our television set it only had a 3-inch screen, and it ran on kerosene. Had an outside and when Daddy's long johns on it, but I found that we got a better reception if you drop the back flap.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real honor for me to introduce our next guest, the winner of the gold medal of the 1976 Olympics, my good friend, what a man, boy, Mr. Bruce Jenner.
Thank you very much, Dean. You know, I am just really pleased to be here, but I'm really sort of surprised because actually Joe Namath and myself really have nothing in common. I'll give you an example. I trained for 12 years for the Olympic Games, and it was a career that lasted less than a week. Joe trained less than a week for a career that lasted 12 years. The decathlon was so difficult that when I finished, I collapsed in the arms of my friends.
I do that every night.
You know, one of Joe's secret to successes was his nickname. You know, DiMaggio had Joltin' Joe. Musial was Stan the Man. And Namath was Broadway Joe. I don't have a nickname. But how do you think it would sound? Broadway Bruce? In fact, when I think about Joe's lifestyle, you know, it sort of reminds me of a great poem by Grantland Rice. When the last great score comes to write against your name, it won't be whether you win or lose, but how you play the game. Joe, for you, it'd probably go something like this. When the last great score comes to write against your name, you'll get the award for putting more points on the board with every kind of dame.
This is the best in the whole world, Mr. Milton Berle.
What a night! What a night! Look at this. Look at me standing between these two beautiful bodies. All heart, no liver. This is really amazing. He sells shaving lotion and he drinks it in. But here we are tonight to honor this Hungarian humperdinck, this sex symbol of the walking wounded. You may say to yourself, how could this athletic Adonis wind up with such a round back? I'll tell you how. He got that way hooking his shoulder pads onto his fly. This dum-dum drank so much Gatorade, they caught him one night shacked up in a motel with a crocodile. Joe Namath comes from a very poor family. When Joe got his first $400,000 bonus, he didn't know what to do for his dear father, who worked down in the coal mines. So he gave him the shaft. Hey, look at Jimmy Walker laughing. Go ahead and laugh, Jimmy. You can walk home alone at 3 in the morning. Tonight, I see another great football on the dais, football hero on the dais, Dick Butkus, sitting over there eating a Buick. I'd like to sing, Joe. I'd like to sing this little tribute to a great champion and a real superstar. N is for the niceness that's within him. A means that he always does his best.
Oh, yeah.
M is for the macho, that's his image. Another A is for the arm, for which he's blessed. T is for the thrills when he was playing. H means how that champ was pushed and shoved.
And shoved and shoved.
Put them all together, they spell Milton. The only man I ever loved. Thank you.
Miss Lee Mary.
I am really, truly delighted to be here and to see Joe Namath again. You know, it's really something, Joe. I almost didn't recognize you with your clothes on. I mean your football outfit. Sexy see-through top that you wear and gold lame hip huggers and cute little white booties and, of course, the pantyhose. And you know, that black eyeliner does something, too. You know what? You should have been Miss America. I'm really tickled to be on this roast because I'm crazy about football. Actually, that's not true. I'm crazy about Joe. I would watch him all the time on television, but I've never seen a game live. So when Buddy Ebsen told me he had 2 tickets to a Los Angeles Rams game, well, I jumped at the chance. It wasn't one of Joe's better games, but then again, what was? Joe had several personal fouls called on him for illegal holding. They caught him grabbing 3 cheerleaders by their pom-poms. No more. I'm sorry, Joe. No more going to live football games. It's too emotional. Because after all, what is football? Okay. 11 big guys jumping on one lone defenseless body. That's what I've been praying for all my life.
Our next guest is one of the greatest linebackers who ever played professional football, Dick Butkus.
It's a great pleasure to be here tonight to pay tribute to my old friendly enemy, Joe Namath. You have to understand, it was nothing personal. Back of the Chicago Bears, it was my job to put him in the hospital. Big-time quarterback like Joe was always surrounded by groupies, beautiful actresses, models, cheerleaders. Of course, we guys on defense, we had our groupies too. But they were the type of women who all look like Mean Joe Green. But I don't begrudge Joe the fame or the fortune, because as a quarterback, he suffered a lot of pain. I know that, because I was one of the guys giving it to him. Toward the end of his career, I asked Joe, how do you feel about being intercepted so many times? And Joe smiled and said, Dick, I don't feel bad at all. The way I've been throwing lately, I'm thrilled anybody is catching it. Joe, you're one of the best ones, man.
Dick Butkus. Ladies and gentlemen, the dynamic Mr. Red Button.
Why are we giving this man a dinner? When some of the biggest sport figures in the history of the world never got a dinner. Stan, the man usual, who said, why didn't they make me the first Polish pope? I was a great cardinal. Never got a dinner. Mark Spitz, who once said, if you lead a horse to water, I'll race him. Will Look, the still Chamberlain who said to his mother, how can you say I look down on you? Never got it there. Evel Knievel, who said for the right money I'd jump over Orson Welles. Catfish Hunter, who's known in Israel as gefilte fish hunter. He never got a dinner. Leon Spinks, who was just voted poster boy for Polydent. Andy Don Meredith, who said to Joe Namath, if you're so great with girls, how come your knees went bad?
Nice to bring on our next guest. Everybody just loves him. A funny guy, a good friend who is currently starring in his own TV series, The Cuckoo Mr. Norm Crosby.
Thank you, Dean. I have done dozens of Dean Martin roasts, and they are always a joy, really. But I must take umbrage with our procurer, Mr. Garrison, here tonight for allowing people to take shots at a sports hero like Willie Joe Namath, because today, especially today, with all the lust and the carnage and the political insemination that's going on in our world, sports heroes are crucially important. I mean, we had heroes. Everybody on this day, as grown-up people, had heroes. We grew up with that. Football players and baseball players and fighters and Batman and Superman and Green Hornet and Yellow Jaundice. We had heroes. Our kids don't have heroes today. They talk about sex and good times. That's all they want to talk about. When we were their age, we did not have sex and good times. We were married. Watch a guy like Bupkis. 7 feet 14, 826 pounds. They tear down the field for 90 yards. They rush through a wall of bodies, throw guys over their shoulders, massacrate themselves, get up after 42 guys piled on them, walk over to the bench like nothing happened, sit down, take off the helmet, turn to the TV cameras and say, "Hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy." Men have more discipline. For example, when you travel, you go into a hotel, you've seen it a million times, there's a small sign in the bathroom that says, "Please put the shower curtain inside the tub before you take a shower." Ladies do not do it. They don't. They're not trained like that. They see it, they don't pay attention. Men do it, instinctively. The minute we see that sign, we do it. Takes us 10 minutes sometimes to get the hooks off. Those romantic escapades are legendary. Girls come to him. It's not his fault. They fling themselves, prostrated his glands. But even then, his discipline shows. It was Joe Namath who once said, and I quote, "It is better to have loved and lost. Much better. And cheaper."
One of the most popular shows on television is Love Boat, kind of a floating motel. And one of the big reasons for its success is our next guest, who plays the ship's doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernie Kopal.
Dean, thank you very much. You know, may I say, I hope you don't mind my saying this, but even though I'm only a Love Boat doctor, I can see you're not taking care of yourself. You should watch your liver.
Okay, well, what channel is it on?
You know, when we film our Love Boat show, we actually shoot it on a ship during a real cruise. So on our last trip, I was surprised to see Joe Namath on board. Not as an actor, but as a passenger. You see, Joe needed a sea trip as therapy for a neck injury he got in his last Rams game. He He was sitting on a bench with a lot of other players, and the manager yelled, "Namath!" Joe got a whiplash looking back over his shoulder to read his jersey to find out that was him. But Joe's own doctor told Joe that the answer to his fatigue was bed. He should stay out of it for a while.
Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, we worked together many, many times, Mr. Joey Bishop.
I tell you this from the bottom of my heart. I love you as much as one man can love another. And if it were not for the fact you're on television, I would think nothing of kissing you. But I know it would be embarrassing to you. So if the urge comes, I'll kiss Angie Dickinson. And then you will know I feel it for you. Okay? You've always been my idol. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. What other football player could have 7 operations and still sign a no-cut contract? Money means nothing to this man, God bless him. How many other football players you know would give up $1 million college career to play professional football? I feel the urge to kiss you. See, Angie, that's how it's done, with an open mouth. You'll always be my idol. I love you, Joe. I tell you this from the bottom of my heart. I don't care what they think. I love you as much as one human being can love another. Get ready for another kiss. Don't open it wide. I don't want to jump in. Just...
Ladies and gentlemen, a brilliant man, a great wit, and I'm happy to say a great buddy, Mr. Orson Welles.
The Namath story begins in Beaver Falls in Pennsylvania, an obscure town whose principal industry was the manufacture of steel. Every Saturday night, the big thrill was to sit around and listen to the town rust. When Joe was born, he doubled the population. By the time he got to high school, he was personally multiplying it. It was evident when Joe was born that he was preordained to become the legend that he is today. At the moment of delivery, the doctor slapped him on the behind and both of his knees went bad. As for me, my purpose here tonight is not oration, but narration. It's my pleasant task to provide the spoken accompaniment to this film you're just about to see, displaying as it does some highlights from the Namath saga.
Once upon a time, there was a magic bean that had a magic spell, and fame and glory would belong to whomever could throw it straight and handle it well. All across the land, wise men plotted and planned to see if they would be the man who could hold this bean in hand. But alas, it was such a difficult task that no solution could be found. So they dashed it and smashed it in anger on the ground. Now, far, far away, in a kingdom on the coast, there was a little prince who made a mighty boast. "I'll throw that bean," he said, "and straight I'll make it go. There's no doubt about it," said the boy named Broadway Joe. Now, to make this story short, I'll have to report that Broadway Joe was right. for in his arm was a magic charm that controlled the bean and its flight. Broadway Joe traveled far and wide and threw the bean so well that everyone gathered round him to tell him he was swell. Scores of lovely maidens attended to his wants, and a guard of honor followed him to all his usual haunts. Then from out of the ground there came a sound that shook the entire shore. It came from the thread of some men who said, "This Joe is simply a bore." From their fearsome faces smoke did spew, while their heads were as hard as an old horseshoe. They were rough and tough and worked all day in the sun. They were cranky and cruel. It's fun. But Joe's days were filled with smiles and zest, and he turned to these villains and said with a jest, "If I happen to meet you guys someday, it'll be best for you to get out of my way." "What's that?" growled those men who were terribly gruff. "How can you say such ridiculous stuff? We'll meet you in battle and steal your bean, then use it ourselves to be nasty and mean." And so it came to pass in a big round castle way down in the south that these merciless men came to take the bean and shut Joey's mouth. The castle was filled with faces familiar and faces stranger, but all of them knew that Joe was in danger, so they gathered together, put their hands on their breast, and sincerely wished him their very best. But Broadway Joe needed luck of more than one kind, because suddenly trouble came from in front and then from behind. They gave him such a knock on the crown that he forgot his bean and left it on the ground. The meanies in blue grabbed the thing and turned it over to their old wizard king. Now everyone rose and stood in alarm to see if the ancient wizard still had magic in his arm. Now in his prime, many ages ago, he could have thrown that bean and hit a dime. But by now his magic arm had spent its force. When he threw the bean, it just fluttered, of course. The wizard's men looked solemn and tragic, and sadly they spoke. "This bean's not magic, it's a fraud, a joke. Give it back to the kid. If it obeys his command, we'll admit defeat and crown him king of the land." But the bean was magic, and everyone knew it, and watched in amazement whenever Joe threw it. He hopped and he popped and he swung with a swish, and the bean had obeyed his every last wish. As darkness fell on this incredible day, the meanies in blue just faded away, and everyone cheered for Broadway Joe, for he had put on such a spectacular show. His beam was turned to silver, as bright as the eye could see, and Joe returned a hero to his kingdom by the sea.
That film was put together by two pals of mine who run the NFL Films in Philadelphia, Big Ed and Steve Sable. Thanks, fellas. Ladies and gentlemen, from the wonderful world of saloons, Mr. Jackie Gale.
Right in the beginning, Joe, I don't think they had too much hope for your series, The Waverly Wonders. Joe's name was written on a dressing room door in chalk, and Mr. Silverman kept walking up and down in front of it with an eraser in his hand. We had Dick Butkus with us, who's trying to make a new name for himself. Anything's an improvement on Butkus. I mean, this is a strong man. He has no neck. Dick, do you realize if it wasn't for your back, your head would be on your hips? And we have Jimmy Walker with us, Joe J.J. himself, who made a new movie about the Civil War. In this version, Lincoln's freed by the slaves. The guy looks like the other side of an X-ray. Jimmy almost didn't show up tonight. He found a wallet with some credit cards in it. And I know you all know Mel Tillis. That's country music stuttering Sam. Mel Tillis, the only man I know who took speech lessons from Porky Pig. Got the beautiful Leanne Merriweather. I'd love to see a kitchen. I'll bet that's stacked, too. I love the southern names, Leanne. You're really from the South? They got the southern names. They got those names. Leanne, Lavone, Elvira, Billy Joe, Billie Jean, Billie June. The fellas got those names. Bob Jack, Jimmy Jack, Willie Jack, Joe Jack, Billy Jack. You want to say hello, you got to have rhythm. Joe played at Alabama. I was once in Alabama. I went into a restaurant. I said, where the Yankees hang out? I said, see that tree?
Here comes one of the classiest ladies you're ever gonna meet. Words can't describe her great talent, her beauty, so I'll just say the adorable Angie Dickinson.
It's awful nice sitting here looking at you. You're not so bad either. I'm here because I have realized the American dream of many, many women. I dated Joe Namath once. I actually did. We had one date. Actually, it was 2 dates. My first and my last. Sorry, Joe, but I gotta tell it like it was. All right, you know what happened? Joe had just bought this new home in Beverly Hills, or Hollywood Hills, someplace, and he asked me if I'd like to see it. And I said, I'd love to see it. So we went, and he lowered the... Then he tried to turn me on by showing me what he thought were pornographic football films. You know what a thrill it is watching a bunch of big football players patting each other's butts? Finally, Joe made his move. He said, Angie, come upstairs. I'd like to show you my football trophies. I was so surprised he showed them to me. One was a knockout. And from what I've heard from women around town, Joe makes love like he played for the Rams. 2 minutes of action and he's out of the game.
You all know Joe Namath has spent a lot of time in hospitals with around-the-clock nursing care. We're very fortunate tonight to have with us Joe's very own private nurse, Miss Sandy Hurt, R.N.
To tell the truth, I'm a little frightened. 1,000 people out there. It's almost enough to scare the pants off me.
Bring in another 1,000.
I can't believe it. Dean Martin on one side of me and Joe Namath on the other. A little girl like me standing here with 2 biggies. I first met Mr. Namath, he was in very bad shape. You see, I'm a visiting nurse. And when complete physical examination, I had to remind Mr. Namath that he was the patient. The therapy Mr. Namath loved most was the alcohol rub. He must have given me 3 a day. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I hope we have the pleasure again sometime.
We never had it the first time. Thank you, Sandy Hurt. This next young lady comes as a special surprise to our guest of honor. For years, she has secretly worshipped and admired him, and she just had to be here to tell her story. Please welcome the long-suffering Gladys Humphrey.
What are you hitting me for? Because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, look at her. She's plain, common, and vulgar.
You left out dumpy, grumpy, and lumpy.
You didn't talk to me that way when you grabbed me by the pinball machine and tried to light my bumpers. When he went to the University of Alabama, he dated every girl on the campus except me. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I was so desperate. I sent him a nude picture of myself. The post office delivered it as junk mail. I was at the end of my rope. I had to do something. I decided on a dramatic suicide. I broke into Joe's apartment, and I stuck my head into his oven. Joe came home, found me, shoved a meat thermometer in my mouth, and basted me. But just having my head in Joe Namath's oven just made me delirious. I began to float. I had what they called an out-of-body experience.
Glad you got back in your body. One of the reasons the TV show Good Times is such a big hit is because of the next fella I'm going to introduce. He's young, he's talented, he's funny. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jimmy Walker.
Thank you so much. It's so glorious to be here in Viva Las Vegas. I've always loved that nickname of yours, Joe Willie Namath. Makes him sound like one of us. And Joe has always been known as a very sharp dresser. Matter of fact, just the other day, he picked up 3 paternity suits. Joe can't laugh at that. Too serious. I asked him the other day, I said, do the bad knees affect your love life? He said, no, only when I have to beg. I see that we have Tom Bosley on the show from Happy Days. I love that show. I watched that show myself, Happy Days. I was watching the other week, matter of fact. You know Happy Days, about the 50s and everything. I'm watching, I realized when I'm watching it, there's no black people on this show. So I called a producer, I asked him, how come there's no black people? He told me no black people in the 50s. All the black folks hiding out waiting for the 60s.
Our next guest has been closely associated with Joe Namath for many years. He's Joe's former roommate and ex-lineman for the New York Jets, Mr. O.J. Simpleton.
First of all, I would like to say hello to my former roommate. This man is a fake. He gets all the glory while we get all the injuries. Look. I've had the same concussion for the last 15 years. My vision is blurred. My speech is slurred. I can't dizzy spells, and I can't walk straight.
I've had that for years.
Joe wanted me on the team because he knew that I have the legs of a gazelle, the heart of a lion, and the eye of an eagle. I have them right here in the bed. Take a look, Dean. I know everything about him. Believe me, and it's not pretty. For one thing, he's a slob. Yes, I used to come home every night, and there by the corner of his bed, he had a pile of dirty girls. And I'll never forget. Yes, I'll never forget the time we were playing for the Washington Redskins.